So today we're going to be continuing with basically the Ottomans going into Europe and, taking on other powers like the Serbian Empire. So let's see how that goes.
The bloodshed of the last 16 years had devastated the Roman world to the point of no return, as the empire was now reduced to a few lands in Thrace, Macedonia, the Aegean, and the Morea.
Ugh.
In addition to territorial losses, Constantinople would not be able to deploy proper field armies anymore like in the past, as its economic and military capabilities were slashed severely. All of this resulted in the remaining Byzantine realm now being heavily reliant on the Italian maritime republics of Venice and Genoa for military, political, and economic support in the upcoming decades. With Osman and Orhan securing early victories against the Byzantines and capitalizing on the political divisions of their neighbors, the Ottoman Beylik had become one of the foremost rising stars of Anatolia.
It's really just like a shame for the Romans, just how vulnerable they are. They can't even field their own armies anymore, completely reliant on powers, outside powers. There is kind of like a tragedy to that,
By 1357, the Ottoman Beylik, under the military leadership of Orhan Gazi's son, Suleiman Pasha, had managed to create a bridgehead into Europe with the territorial acquisition of the Gallipoli Peninsula. As Thrace was opened to Ottoman raiders and Ottoman families continued settling in the newly captured regions in Europe, the presumptive heir of the Beylik would also begin the peaceful annexation of Anatolian towns like Ankara and Bolu with the help of the local Ahis religious order, the same order that Osman had allied during the days with the Kayi tribe. However, the same year would also see the 12-year-old Shehzada Halil, Orhan's son, through his marriage to the Byzantine royal Theodora Cantacuzeni, being captured by Genoese pirates during a raid on Ottoman territory.
I missed that.
Cantacuzeni being
Okay,
captured.
so according to some sources, he was on a boat tour when he was caught by Genoese pirates. Oh, wow.
By Genoese pirates during a raid on Ottoman territory. Pleading for the return of his son, the elderly and desperate Orhan went so far as to request the help of the newly established Byzantine Emperor John V Palaiologos in the following negotiations with the pirates. In an act of classic Byzantine diplomacy, the emperor agreed to help the Ottoman leader retrieve back his son from the Genoese in return for declaring the half-Byzantine prince as heir to the Ottoman Beylik, paying half of the ransom.
Okay, I see what John's doing. Yeah, the Byzantines were known for their diplomacy at certain points, and for being pretty good at it, so this is an opportunity that can really benefit him, but I don't see Suleiman just being content with that, right? Suleiman does not strike me as a guy who would... I could be wrong again, we'll find out right now, but I'd imagine Suleiman wouldn't like not being the heir, or probably wouldn't just sit idly by with letting someone else, take the throne. But this is quite an opportunity that the Byzantines are trying to seize, and I like that. Obviously get a half Byzantine heir on the throne, and probably through diplomacy get some type of influence in the Ottoman camp, right? That's just smart. Even when they're down, they're still trying. So let's see. Yeah, again, if Orhan agrees to this, then, yeah, John's a great diplomat, but Suleiman's the wild card, right? Suleiman's like, hey, I'm the one conquering, why shouldn't I be in charge, That's what I'm imagining that it's gonna happen,
Requested by the pirates, revoking the Ottoman alliance with the Palaiologos rivaled Kantakozenos family, cancelling all of Constantinople's debts to Bursa accumulated during the latest civil war, and lastly the cessation of all Ottoman raids into Byzantine territories. Orhan would reluctantly agree to John's terms, and all Ottoman conquests in Thrace were put on hold while the Byzantines negotiated with the Genoese. After 2 years of negotiations, Halil would be released and be first transported back to Constantinople, where the Ottoman Byzantine prince would wed the emperor's 10-year-old daughter before being shipped off to Bursa. The whole crisis would highlight John V's answer to Ottoman aggression by planting the seeds for a Byzantine royal to inherit Ottoman territories and even potentially transforming the Beylik into a fellow Christian ally.
Again, John showing those diplomatic chops, you know, like that's just really smart on his part. That was a really good deal he got. Again, Suleiman though, Suleiman on the other side probably ain't gonna like hearing that, you know. But I guess we'll find out. Maybe he won't. But again, that's just some good diplomacy right there. You know, I'm really surprised Orhan, wasn't he already elderly when he married the Byzantine woman? Like, I'm surprised he could, like, you know, still produce enough good seed to get anyone pregnant. I know this is a weird thought. I'm like, isn't he already old? Like, dang, man. I'm surprised he got it up, you know. But yeah, good on him. Good on Orhan. He's just built different.
V's plans for the Ottoman Beylik would move further forward when Orhan's eldest son and assumed heir, Suleiman Pasha, unexpectedly died during a hunting expedition.
Holy crap. Dude, never mind. That's actually, like, pretty good. At least on paper, right, for the Romans? Like, that's really great for the Romans. Like, get rid of the other assumed heir. I mean, granted, he died of natural causes, but you know what I mean? Like, things look, on paper, that looks great for the Romans. Like, holy crap. But what's gonna happen? That's too lucky for the Romans. The Romans somehow are lucky and unlucky. So, like, I'm wondering what's gonna be the next thing that throws the wrench in the plans. Because things are looking a bit too good for the Romans. And we all know that the world doesn't like when the Romans are doing too good. At least when they're in the Byzantine era of their reign.
Expedition in 1359. Going into grief for his son and heir, the now physically ill Orhan Gazi would appoint his 33-year-old son, Shehzada Murad, to oversee the Ottoman armies stationed in Thrace, before secluding himself within the walls of the Ottoman palace in Bursa.
I didn't know he had another son.
However, like his brother before him, Murad would also ignore the established agreements between Constantinople and Bursa, and began planning for a future military campaign to seize the major Byzantine city of Adrianople.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I thought that was gonna be Suleiman doing that, but apparently it's the new brother who has showed up now. Yeah, he's probably not gonna respect the agreement. That sucks. If he hadn't had another kid, that might have been a great, like, one of the most lucky breaks the Byzantines ever got, right? But unfortunately, no.
After 3 years of being inactive, Ottoman armies in Thrace would begin military operations in the region in a two-pronged invasion. The upcoming military campaign would be led by 3 Ottoman commanders, all appointed by Murad personally: Lala Shahin Pasha, Hachi Il Bey, and Gazi Evrenos Bey, the latter 2 being former Karasid commanders. The Ottoman prince would first assign Evrenos Bey and his forces alongside the Thracian Aegean Sea coast to prevent Christian reinforcements from entering the region from the west, while he himself would take the bulk of the Ottoman army into Byzantine territory up north. During the beginning of 1360, the Ottoman military campaign would begin, which would see Murad swiftly capturing the towns of Lüleburgaz, Babeyski, and Kirklareli, reaching the Black Sea coast, thus territorially cutting off Constantinople from the rest of Europe. That following year, Evrenos Bey would capture the militarily strategic fortress town of Didymataiko after a short siege, while Murad was finalizing his preparations for the march towards Adrianople.
Yeah, I love the complete disregard, again, that, like, Suleiman and now Murad have towards established agreements of, like, peace. They're like, yeah, no. And, like, Orhan's already old. He's kind of, like, for the most part, retired and secluded, so it's not like he's gonna put a stop to this. Like, And Constantinople is completely like cut off from everything, even the rest of their empire. They're just a city now. Wow, it sucks to be the Byzantine Romans.
As panic arose in Constantinople, caused by the sudden Ottoman invasion, John V would form a new joint Byzantine-Bulgarian force in the west to counterattack the Ottomans in Thrace. However, the coalition force would be dispersed by Murad during the subsequent Battle of Pinahisar and be pushed back behind the walls of Adrianople. Consolidating all his forces in the region, Murad began his much-awaited siege on Adrianople during the summer of 1361. Before long, the local Byzantine governor of the city fled from the siege, thus resulting in the local garrison surrendering to Ottoman forces. Soon after the fall of Adrianople in the spring of 1362, the secluded 80-year-old Orhan Gazi would die from natural causes. His final words to his son Murad were, "Son, I've reached the end of my road while you are just starting out on yours. May God the Almighty bless your reign." Orhan Gazi would be buried in the Ottoman capital city of Bursa, the city that he had conquered 36 years ago. Being renowned as the greatest and wealthiest of the Turkoman rulers of Anatolia by the famous 14th century Muslim scholar and traveller Ibn Battuta, Orhan Gazi's greatest legacy would be transforming the Ottoman Beylik into a military power on par with the Byzantine Empire, and for expanding the state into Europe. Receiving the news of the death of his father while in Thrace, Murad would start his journey back to the capital city of Bursa to secure the Ottoman throne. Upon arriving in the city, the young Shahzada would be proclaimed as Sultan by the statesmen and the religious ulema of the capital. Meanwhile, in Anatolia, the news of Orhan's death had brought a period of uncertainty in the region, as the Ottoman garrison at Ankara was expelled by the local officials of the city, and the sons of the former Ottoman ruler, Shahzada Ibrahim and Halil, revolted against Murad's swift seizure of the Ottoman throne. Hearing of the troubling developments from his Anatolian province,
Yeah, I love how everyone ignored the agreement between the Byzantines and Orhan to have Halil be the successor. Even Orhan at his deathbed was like, "May he bless your reign." Like, he's like, "Yeah, no, Halil ain't inheriting the throne." I don't know why, this is hilarious. Like, the Byzantines secured a great deal and no one cared about it. That sucks.
in a quick and successful military campaign during the same year, Murad would re-establish Ottoman rule in Ankara and defeat and execute his two half-brothers.
Shedding the royal blood was prohibited in the tradition, so Murad had his brother strangled. Great loophole.
Marking the event as the first Ottoman fratricide in history. After stabilizing his Anatolian holdings for the time being, the new Ottoman leader turned his gaze back to Thrace and made new plans to once again strike deep into the local region in a two-pronged invasion. Gazi Evrenos Bey would take his contingent of the Ottoman army and head west, hugging the Aegean Sea, while Lala Shahin Pasha would take his forces up north towards the Rhodope mountain range and descend into the Maritsa Valley. The Ottoman military offensive started out strong, with Evrenos Bey capturing the city of Komotini and Lala Shahin Pasha capturing Stara Zagora before going on to besiege Plovdiv, one of the largest cities within the Bulgarian Empire. After a long siege, in 1364, the city would fall to the forces of Lala Shahin Pasha and would thus serve as a major military base for the Ottomans in the region. As cities in Thrace collapsed like dominoes, Murad would further order another mass migration of Ottoman families from Anatolia to resettle in the newly conquered lands in Europe. After the Black Death, many cities in the Balkans were heavily depopulated. This made it easier for the Ottomans, who were only lightly scarred by the pandemic, to conquer and settle in the Balkans throughout the course of the decade. With the death
Yeah, a lot of luck for the Ottomans. Especially the Black Death, which is infamous, right, for how many people died. That makes settling just so much easier. Oh, man.
of Shahzada Halil and the Ottoman conquest of Thrace, an official peace treaty was signed between the Ottomans and a now rump Byzantine Empire in 1364, which would result in John V.
Okay, so Murad's offer agrees to make ceasefire with the Byzantines. John's offer recognized the Ottoman conquest by revoking his claim in Thrace, promising to refrain from forming an anti-Ottoman coalition.
Recognizing Murad's conquests in the region and promising to refrain from forming an anti-Ottoman coalition with other European powers. Although there is a lack of European sources on the matter, according to traditional Ottoman chronicles, during the same year the peace treaty was signed, a European crusade was launched by the rulers of Hungary, Serbia, Bosnia and Wallachia against Murad. Marching on Adrianople, which was by then slowly being transformed into a...
Yeah, that's an interesting agreement that the Ottomans had with the Byzantines. The Byzantines even have the power to say no anymore. Like they're literally powerless. They can't field their armies. They're just like a city and a few holdings now, so they can kind of be bullied, I feel like, into doing whatever in a sense by the in comparison to the Ottomans, right? But cool, we're seeing a crusade, and yeah.
New Ottoman capital city. The goal of the crusade was to thwart further Muslim expansion into the Balkans and to possibly even push the Ottomans back across the Dardanelles into Anatolia. However, in a series of shrouded events, the Crusader army would be repulsed by the Ottoman forces of Haji Bey near the walls of Adrianople during the Battle of Srp Sunder, or Serbian destruction, which would see a 10,000...
Although the battle's occurrence is unclear, sources agree that the Serbian Empire suffered a major defeat by the Ottomans during the period.
...strong Ottoman force, defeating a far larger European host. The decisive Ottoman victory would help ensure a permanent Ottoman presence in the Balkans for another decade, and would also mark the first time the Ottomans would fight against an invading Crusader army in their history. As Ottoman victories against European powers mounted, another crusade was launched against Murad in 1366, this time under the leadership of the Count of Savoy, Amadeus VI. In a short military...
Amadeus. But yeah, it's kind of cool that we're finally seeing the rest of Europe involved, because previously they weren't. It was just the Byzantines and the Ottomans, but it seems like the rest of Europe is starting to catch on to the Ottomans and their growing power. Now they're trying to find ways, or at least they're not testing, but they're like coming to direct conflict now that the Ottomans are going deeper into Europe, you know? So yeah, again, I'm interested in seeing more in-depth battles, which we will, I'm sure, you know, down the line, but just how the Ottomans and their tactics are faring against, you know, other European powers.
Campaign between 1366 and 1367, Savoyard forces proved far more successful compared to their Balkan counterparts, having recaptured the Gallipoli Peninsula for the Byzantines, before proceeding to raid the Bulgarian Black Sea coastline. With the Byzantine Emperor openly working with the Crusaders and travelling to Hungary and Rome for military support against the Ottomans, Murad would renew his war with both Constantinople and the Bulgarians. During the year 1360...
Yeah, so John, it seems like the perspective is John broke the treaty, at least from the telling of this video. He decided to just now open negotiations with other European powers. I'd imagine because he probably didn't trust the Ottomans in the long run. I feel like the Ottomans would eventually just come back, especially someone like Murad, who previously broke established agreements, you know what I mean? So maybe John just didn't trust Murad, and I feel like rightfully so, because Murad kind of did break a previous treaty. So yeah, I think, but then again, it's also like dangerous, because now Murad can just set his sights back on taking more Byzantine holdings. So yeah.
The Bulgarian towns of Yambol, Burgas, Samakov and Sliven were quickly captured by Ottoman forces, and Byzantine lands were once again thoroughly raided. seeing that European assistance was not forthcoming, John V would send his son, Manuel, to Adrianople, now renamed Edirne, to plead with Murad and re-establish peace, which the desperate Byzantine emperor was thankfully granted. With peace once again re-established, Murad I could now focus on domestic issues, such as integrating his newly conquered territories into the Sultanate. Like Muslim states, the Ottoman Sultanate followed a traditional policy of tolerance towards the peoples of the book, ergo Christians and Jews, who had the right.
The people of the book is an Islamic term that refers to followers of other Abrahamic religions.
To protection of their lives, properties and religions, as long as they accepted Muslim rule and paid the special head tax called the jizya in lieu of performing military service.
Yeah, we know the jizya tax already. We're well acquainted after the early Muslim expansion.
Although mass conversion was prohibited due to the Ottoman desire to retain the jizya as a major source of income, some sections of the Balkan nobility would convert to Islam during this period to gain the full benefits of Ottoman rule. Perhaps the most major domestic development to come out during the reign of Murad I would be the introduction of the Janissary military corps into the Ottoman military. After the conquests of the last decade, the Ottoman state and its Ghazi soldiers had acquired considerable plunder, including the acquisition of many Christian male prisoners of war. During the reign of Murad, the Ottoman state instituted a tax of 1/5 on all slaves taken in war, and it was from this pool of manpower that Murad first constructed the elite Janissary military corps. With the help of his Grand Vizier, Kandali Halil Pasha the Elder, the Sultan's first household troops were formed, thus creating the first standing elite military corps in Ottoman history.
Wow.
In the next few decades, the Devshirme, also known as the blood tax, would be fully institutionalized within the Ottoman state, which would see the recruitment and training of young Christian peasants within the Ottoman state.
Wow, the first modern standing army in Europe. That's impressive, holy crap.
His roles within the central Ottoman administration and military. By the time of Murad's conquests in the Balkans, the two other major powers of the region, the empires of Bulgaria and Serbia, were in the slow process of decentralization and economic stagnation. During the first half of the 14th century, both states had taken advantage of the rapid loss of Byzantine power in the Balkans by annexing large swaths of Byzantine lands in the region. While the Byzantine world was crumbling, Serbia, under Emperor Stefan Uroš IV, would reach its territorial, political, economic and cultural peak, thereby ushering in a mini-Serbian Golden Age. It was during this period the Serbian emperor would openly contest and undermine Byzantine authority in the region by proclaiming himself as the Emperor of the Serbs and Greeks, thereby declaring himself to be the true inheritor of the Roman legacy, in addition to propping up the Serbian Patriarchal Church as the head of Eastern Orthodoxy. However, in 1355, the benevolent and ambitious ruler of Serbia would suddenly die, leaving his newly constructed empire to his son Stefan Uroš V. Lacking the political and martial skills of his father, and often being indecisive in his ruling, Uroš V would be unable to keep the Serbian nobility under his control for most of his reign. By 1365, the most powerful of the Serbian nobles, Vukašin Munjevčević, had considerable influence over Uroš and was even given the lesser title of King of Serbia, and effectively ruled over the weak emperor. Meanwhile, Bulgaria, under Tsar Ivan Alexander, would also go through a period of decentralization, which would see the empire being split into 3 separate entities, all ruled by semi-autonomous Bulgarian princes. In the wake of uniting the realm under his rule and seeking to get revenge for the Battle of Srpsunda, King Vukašin Munjevčević, at the head of a 20,000 to 50,000 strong force alongside much of the Serbian nobility, would invade the Ottoman Beylik during the late summer of 1371. Stationed in Edirne and hearing the news of an incoming Crusader invasion from the Balkans, Lala Shah.
I will say though, it's interesting that while the Ottomans are on the rise right now, gaining more power, influence, a lot of the empires around them are like crumbling and like divided against themselves and fighting and like plagued with bad rulers. So it's like definitely the Ottomans, that works in great favor for the Ottomans, you know? And it really is that divide and conquer, you know? The enemy is so divided within themselves that conquering them is much easier. So yeah.
Shahin Pasha would send out letters to Murad, who was in Bursa with most of the Ottoman army, to send military reinforcements to Thrace at once, while Ghazi of Renos Bey was gathering the remaining Ottoman forces in Thrace to put up minor resistance against the Crusaders. As the Crusader army reached near the outskirts of the Ottoman capital, the military decision to halt and encamp near the river Maritsa was taken by the Serbian nobility. According to Ottoman chronicles, the Crusader army had begun to feast at night, leaving their encampment unprotected.
Oh boy.
The Serbian nobility did not believe a major Ottoman army was in the region, since most of the Ottoman army had been recalled to Anatolia months before by Murad. With the element of
they're about to get jumped. How many times have we seen this? Like, during a siege or stuff, people just start feasting and like letting down their guard, and then they get jumped. Like, yeah, probably not the best to do that in enemy territory, even if you are secure, you know. But oh well.
Surprise on his side, Ghazi of Renos Bey and his 800-strong scouting retinue would ambush the Crusader camp in the middle of the night, alongside Lala Shahin Pasha's garrison forces from Edirne. Thousands of Serbians were killed in their tents, and many drowned in the nearby Maritsa as a large-scale panic engulfed the Serbian camp, caused by Evrenos's sudden night raid. Serbian King Vukašin Munjevčević and the bulk of the Serbian nobility would too be slaughtered in the pursuing mayhem, which would see the destruction of the Crusader army. Only by the time the sun was up the following morning, it became evident to Ottoman leaders that they had won a major victory. According to Balkan chronicles, the Maritsa was polluted with thousands of bodies, and the river ran scarlet with the blood of those killed during the battle for weeks. The Ottoman victory during the Battle of Maritsa, also known as the Battle of Chernomen, would firmly secure Ottoman presence in the Balkans. The battle would also mark the beginning of the end of the Serbian Empire, as the childless Stefan Uroš V would die during the following winter, leaving what remained of the Serbian nobility to establish their own despotates in the former imperial lands of the emperor.
So that's the end of the empire. And again, divide and conquer. Now the Ottomans have a more divided enemy to take. And again, like I said, I think they took way too lightly. In enemy territory, probably it's best not to let your guard down. I think that was obviously, as history proved, a foolish decision. But yeah.
Hearing the news of the crusade against him and the victory at the Maritsa, Murad I and the bulk of the Anatolian army would swiftly travel back into Thrace, where he would once again make plans to conduct another major military campaign into the Balkans after the collapse of the Serbian Empire. During the year 1372, Ottoman armies would begin the campaign by marching into Christian-held Macedonia alongside the Aegean coast, conquering the cities of Xanthi, Kavala, Drama, Ceres, Kustendil and Veria. In addition to the conquests of many towns in Macedonia, the Serbian breakaway domains of Prilep and Velbajд both submitted and became vassals of Murad as Ottoman armies approached their gates. With the Ottoman victory at the Battle of Maritsa and Muslim armies now freely marching around the Balkans, the Bulgarian and Byzantine empires both made strides to reach a rapprochement with Murad to keep their realms intact. In 1373, John V Palaiologos became a tributary to Edirne in return for retaining the few Balkan holdings he still ruled, like the major coastal city of Thessalonica. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Tsar Ivan Shishman of Bulgaria would also negotiate with Murad to become a tributary to Edirne, in addition to also giving the hand of his sister, Kere Tamara, to the Ottoman Sultan. Within only 2 years after his victory at the Maritsa, Sultan Murad I, grandson to a lowly nomadic warlord who migrated to Anatolia, had become the overlord of both the Byzantine and Bulgarian empires, in addition to large swaths of the former Serbian Empire.
So we're gonna end the video right there, and tomorrow we're gonna continue more with the rise of, the Ottomans, and overall just insane how they've just subjugated so many people, and poor Rome, they are holding on for dear life. Man.